All right, we're back to discuss Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and if you saw our review, we all enjoyed the movie. I probably threw the most caveats on my review, simply because I thought there were it had way too many characters just for the sake of it. The whole statesman thing was kind of a throwaway, and then we had all these characters that we had to deal with and come up with plot lines for and do things with, and they literally freeze Channing Tatum for half the movie. Halle Berry disappears for half the movie. Mark Strong disappears for half the movie. Pedro Pascal is who I was talking about when I was in the review section. How I think he's just the one character too many that's like, he's the one that's double-crossing them, and, you know, his name's not in... I looked at the poster on the way out, it's like, nope, they don't even mention Pedro Pascal as being part of the movie, and so... That just kind of got at me. I think what they were doing was they realized that they had a whole lot of ground to cover to make up for the fact that this movie had a big Samuel L. Jackson-sized hole in it, and so they did their best to fill that hole with Elton John. And crazy as Julianne Moore was and all the stuff that she had going on, she had this sort of locationality thing where that section that set her up was absolutely ridiculous, and I don't mean that in a good way, where she just starts narrating and talking about how she moved out into the jungle somewhere and
she
built
did that more than once.
Like, why?
I guess that's her gimmick. She likes to talk about her moving to the jungle. I don't know.
Okay. But yeah, I think the movie could have been better by being about 30 minutes shorter. That's
How long
where
was
I stand. About 2:15.
Oh, wow. I didn't think it was that long.
Yeah.
I could see a few trims, but maybe not full 30 minutes. Yeah, I was a little shocked that the watching the previews for this, I was like, oh crap, they're just gonna load this with star power. It's gonna become the Expendables, and I'm not gonna enjoy a single bit of it. And I'm pleased to say I was wrong about that. I thought all the cameos, all the big names they brought in, not really cameos, were all worked for me.
But they traded on who they were, for sure.
Yeah,
rather than really giving them a character.
That's pretty accurate. I mean, Elton John was Elton John, but...
I mean, you could say the same thing about everybody, though. Channing Tatum
yes.
was Channing Tatum.
And luckily he got put deep freeze, so you got the right amount of Channing
Jeff
Tatum.
Bridges was Jeff Bridges. I mean, it's
Right,
all the way
I
down
see.
the line.
Oh,
They're
Jeff
all
Bridges
the
was
same.
so good, though. Anyways.
He's in, what, 8 minutes of it, maybe?
Yeah, sure. But I feel like
he's a character I could lose. Like, that's what I mean. Like, there's
Okay.
stuff, there's people in this movie that don't need to be there. There's exposition that doesn't need to be there. There's plot lines and resolutions that don't need to be there. It's just like, we care about Taron Egerton and we care about Colin Firth, and the rest of it is window dressing and should be window dressing.
Okay, that's very fair.
One of the big drawbacks the first movie had for me was the villain. I didn't think the first movie had a good villain. And
Didn't like Samuel L. Jackson.
I didn't like
And
Samuel
his
L.
crazy
Jackson's
voice.
character. I couldn't stand him. I thought Julianne Moore was the right amount of crazy for this. I enjoyed her character a lot more as the villain than I did Samuel L. Jackson. So that's where this movie evened out for me. The first movie had a much tighter story and didn't lag in the second half as much as this one did, but I thought this one made up for it with a good villain.
Yeah, I think she was fine. I think a lot of it felt like world building, that they didn't expect to get a sequel kind of thing, because the first one was wildly successful and beyond what they expected it to be at all. And so bringing in the Statesman and creating a Kingsman cinematic universe at this point, like,
Yeah.
they have to do all this extra stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that gets kind of
Right.
bogged down. But yeah,
And I wouldn't be shocked if they do more with the Statesman as well in future films.
It seemed to hint at that.
I mean, they got rid of
towards the
Pedro
end.
Pascal, so it's just Channing Tatum and Halle Berry, and yawn if I don't ever want to see that movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You see what I mean?
You've got a point there, yeah.
Yeah. So I think they did some interesting things too. I mean, so I'm gonna spoilers for the first Kingsman now. So the princess offers him anal sex in return for saving the world at the end of the first Kingsman, and a bunch of people got offended by that. I saw it happen live in the theater that we were in. Like, people were like, "No, that was too far."
It was ridiculous.
That's too far.
People like
really.
wanting to walk out, and people saying that was gross as they're walking out of the
People's
theater.
heads literally just exploded
Yeah,
on the screen.
and to me, it makes it. On the one hand, it's funny, and on the other hand, it's kind of sad that like they keep the princess character in the movie. Like, she's in the sequel, and she's still his girlfriend, and he has to like ask her permission to sleep with another agent. It's like, really, like, that's kind of funny, but it also kind of ruins the whole James Bond on overdrive thing.
Yes.
I mean, maybe it's satire to put it in the other direction, that he's like, you know, a faithful husband spy who's now a prince. I don't know.
I thought it made him more likable.
I agree. I think it was the right. I think it was the right
Because
decision.
the other way around is the usual cliche. So it's almost like what he did. That was almost the rebelling thing these days.
I get it. I get it, and it makes sense, and it works. If they did another movie, I'm not sure how it would work again. That sort of thing becomes an issue. The way they turned on its head with Elton John is really funny.
The scene where he inserts the tracker, I think, is going to be the scene that people bitch about.
Yes, that's going to be the scene people complain. Well, that and the meat grinder, but...
The meat grinder's way worse.
So
Oh, the meat grinder's definitely
you would
worse,
think-
but...
You would
the
think.
thought of it is,
But
but
people
what came
hate
out was like
sexuality for some
sausage,
reason.
not human.
Right.
Like, it's R-rated. I was expecting to see something not like sausage meat coming out.
I-
That was not a human.
What's coming out isn't the problem. What's going in is the problem.
Julianne Moore fed it to a guy.
Right.
Yeah, that
Like,
was gross.
You would think
The
that
woman
would
in
be-
front of me was like gagging. She was like having none of it. And then when it showed up again at the end, it was like, oh, for God's sake. Like, now they're going to put Pedro Pascal through it. And sure enough, that's where they were going.
That's where they went with it. And they could have went with something else at the end. I already saw that. But still, now I'm just nitpicking. So...
Yeah, I think that's going to be the thing, the peak that, and thankfully it's later, it's earlier in the movie this time, where you're not going to go all the way through the movie with a smile on your face and then suddenly get offended. It's like, no, that scene happens almost right off the bat, and so if you're offended by the meat grinder, you can just leave and not see any of the rest of it.
I think the backdoor joke was great in the first movie because it caught me by surprise. I didn't see it coming, so I did a spit take literally in my house when that happened. But I loved it.
The thing that got me the most in this one, I literally like blew soda out my nose, was when Colin Firth like starts up to do the action scene that he did in the first movie, where he like locks the doors and he's like, "Manners maketh man," and then he throws the cup
misses.
and
depth perception.
Pedro Pascal catches it and is like, "What the fuck?" It's so great. It's like, oh, that didn't work out at all.
Not at all. No, it was.
So yeah, that was my favorite part.
There were so many good ones.
Just everything with Elton John was just magic in this.
You know, the film's a weird blend of like action and like, but like it's got its own weird comedy style as well. With that, like, it just kind of works. Like, that must have been a weird balance to pull off when they were putting it together. Like, how's this gonna come across? You know?
Well, I think that's what
Like
the first
tone?
one got right, was the tone.
Yeah.
Was, you know, it started off as a very, you know, it's a spy story kind of thing, but at first it was just sort of like, you thought it was just Taron Egerton's character that was kind of raw and over the top, and it's like, oh no, this whole movie is going to be like a South Park R-rated
And
James Bond.
It didn't click for me in the first movie to the church scene, which all of a sudden the action was so over the top. I was like, well, okay, I thought this was more James Bond. This is full on crazy action movie.
Yeah.
Beyond full on crazy action movie. I'm having trouble comparing it to something else.
Right.
It's like the biggest stunts in James Bond, just times 10.
Yeah. Or something for like the Mission Impossible movies, but it's like it's like whatever the best scene from a Mission Impossible movie was, that's what all the action scenes are like in this.
There's some weird stuff with the camera in this movie a little bit, because they do a lot of weird rotation movements and panning. The frame rate doesn't seem high enough to make it feel smooth, and maybe it's just because how we were viewing it.
That's possible. I mean, they were doing a lot of things with locking the movement to an object like a head or something like that. So the camera would roll when someone would roll over a bar or something like that. I didn't think there was a problem with the frame rate. I think sometimes when they shoot action that close, it can get really choppy and hard to understand. But I think Matthew Vaughn, I mean, they did it in the first Kingsman too. I think Matthew Vaughn does a good job with it. So yeah, that's Kingsman Golden Circle. If you like the way we do these, please like the video, subscribe, check out all the written and video reviews at dalemaxfield.com, and thanks for watching.